I tend to not do a lot of planning before I write a piece. I just sort of start at the beginning, um, and uh, and I don't jump around in the process either. So I really try to experience it as a composer the way that the audience will experience it. So you've heard this, what should be next? And really, it's sort of storytelling for me. I uh, I mean, I tend to work whenever I can, in sort of weird chunks of time. It could be the morning when everyone's out of the house. Of course, no one's out of the house now, um, so it's more of a challenge. But I work at the computer, and I have a keyboard, and I improvise on the piano, and I just put it into the computer, and that's it's pretty simple, really. I mean, there's uh, it's not like a laboratory sort of scientific process for me. It's listening. It's about listening and listening for what should be next, and using my intuition, kind of zooming in to the small moment, and then always thinking about the big picture, um, and really just sort of starting at the beginning and getting to the end. It's for me. It's a very linear process. Well, I've been working on a big opera for the last year, which I've just gotten to the end of, and the story is very much in place for with an opera. You know exactly what the story is you're trying to tell, and a lot of composers say this: if they've written an opera, and then they go back to writing a string quartet or an orchestra piece without the story, it's really a challenge, to suddenly decide what that story is. What do you want to tell? Where exactly is this music going? And that really is a challenge, but it's also what makes it so exciting. You know, Sometimes I just find the right beginning, that I hope will be arresting in some way, that will pull the listener in. And then I just sort of let myself tell the story from there. It's sort of like, well, given this set of circumstances that I've placed myself in, what's what are the possible outcomes, and where could this story go in a way that would hold the listener's attention, until the end. I would say that, um, I don't really have any interest in writing music that's about despair, or hopelessness. um, that for me, the way music functions in my life, what I love about music is that it's a sort of sanctuary, I suppose. It's like a religion for me. It's like church would function, I think, for a lot of people, or temple, or whatever religion people are ascribed to. But for me, it's a very spiritual, and profound, part of my life. And I would say that, I would like to write music which perhaps functions in the same way for some people, not everybody. But really, it's about, for me, trying to make a kind of musical space, that I would want to be in, and I would feel, uh, in the end, I felt something, uh, hopeful, uplifting, um, and a sense of, uh, a sanctuary is really the only word I can come up with. So yeah. I don't. That's a really interesting question, and I probably should. I mean, it might be something I've often thought about writing a lot of piano music, which is something I've never had time to do. I'm a pianist, but I've written very little for the piano, and I thought of some, large pieces I'd like to work on. Um, but I guess I really do. Uh, I do love the experience of making something which will be performed, you know, for a live audience, because the possibilities are so exciting. The possibilities of of really holding the listener in the place that you've created, and the possibility of holding their attention from the beginning of something maybe that's 2 hours long until the very end. Is that possible? That's such a challenge, and it's not an accident if it happens. That's what I love about it. That it's if I think that if I do my job right, if I control all the parameters in music that there are, harmony and pacing and rhythm and texture and register and orchestration, that it's possible, under the best circumstances. On my best day, I can, I can make an experience, which will maybe allow the listener to forget everything else and just be completely engrossed. I mean, that's obviously the best possible, the best possible world for me. I finished one yesterday, actually. I'm talking to you the day after I finished an over 2 hour long opera. But, and I thought I would feel, such an amazing sense of accomplishment. And the thing is, I never do, because number one, I'm just thinking about what can I write next. I mean, I love the process so much. I love to be in the world of decision making and problems, that composing a piece represents. It can be so stressful, but it's a world I want to be in. But the thing is, when a piece is finished, well, in the case of an opera, you've got to orchestrate the whole thing. You've got to have workshops, and you've got to fix things that aren't working. You have to listen to singers who are telling you that things you could work better for the voice. Can I hold this note longer, etc. And then you've got to get the piece in front of an audience and see what it feels like, because the dynamic of live performance is something that you can try to anticipate. The best composers could do it so well. I was thinking Beethoven is such a, he's so well understood, like how it would feel to listen to a piece of his in the hall, probably, I imagine. But that's hard for me, I can miscalculate things, the pacing of things, like this is too long, this is too short. Oh, I should have made more of this moment. This idea wasn't clear. I thought it was going to be clear, but it clearly isn't when we're sitting there in the live space and hearing this. So I really like an opportunity to revise after I hear the premiere or maybe a couple of performances. And that's the tough thing about writing orchestra music and operas, that sometimes you don't get another chance. You've got to make it count on the premiere. So anyway, at a certain point, I move on, and the piece has to be done. And I really sort of never consider it again in terms of what could be done, what could be better. If people are performing it, that's great. If they're not, I find that I have very little control over that. What pieces work and what pieces don't. What pieces resonate with people and which don't. I never get it right. I always think, oh, this piece is really gonna, make an impact, and then people are kind of like indifferent, and so it's hard to predict. I wrote this piece for Renee Fleming called "The Brightness of Light," and it's for Rod Gilfrey and Renee Fleming. It's a piece about Georgia O'Keeffe and her husband Alfred Stieglitz, and it's based on their letters. And there's a song at the very end of the set, the last song in that set, that is supposed to be like at the end of O'Keeffe's life, and she sort of becomes one with the land, and the way I'm imagining it. And I think uh, it's called Sunset. And what is it called? Sunset? I changed the title. I can't remember the title, because that was an original version. I changed it. But anyway, I like that moment, and I feel like by the time I had written that song, I really knew Renee's voice, and she just sings it so beautifully. And I feel like I gave her something that she can really sort of, her voice can bloom in a way that, so I guess I would say that if I had to listen to anything of mine, I would say maybe I'd listen to that. Actually, also, I have to say too that one of my favorite pieces of mine is the flute concerto that was premiered at Cabrillo, that Joe and Betty Hirsch commissioned. I like listening to that piece. So I don't know. I don't like listening to all of my music, but I like the second movement. I like listening to. I'd like to say the profession I would have pursued, if not a composer, would be a professional tennis player. But it probably wasn't in the cards. But so now I'm like trying in my late 40s to improve my tennis game. I'm a huge tennis fan. I don't think it would really be a satisfying lifestyle, so that's just kind of a joke. But I think I'd be a writer. I would like to either have written books or screenplays, or be I think involved in film in some way. I mean, a lot of people have said that my music sounds like film music, and then more astute people have said, actually, your music is influenced not by film music but by film. And I think that's a very interesting observation. I think that that my music sort of plays like the drama of a film. Um, and that's because I love film so much. I love great filmmaking. So I feel like, when I was a kid, I wanted to make movies. I wanted to, I wanted to like get a really great camera and remake Star Wars and The Wizard of Oz and all these movies. So I feel like if music hadn't sort of taken hold, being a composer was not something I really imagined doing when I was younger. I thought of being a pianist, and composing is something that I realized that I was improvising. I had a teacher who asked me to start writing some of those things down and helped me write them down when I was, quite young. And it just, I guess, became something that I feel like I developed late, but I felt it was something that was compelling for me, that was something that I could keep doing and I would keep doing. I think it's amazing what you're doing under the circumstances at Cabrillo. I'm looking forward to the virtual festival, but it's just since I think it was 2003 was the first year that Marin did my second symphony there, and I had been back so many times, and it's I told this to Ellen several times. It's just such a special place. There's a feeling of when I'm driving through the woods, through the hills to get to Santa Cruz, a kind of excitement. I mean, and it's a nervousness, but also it's an incredible excitement. There's just some like electricity to the place, and I think it's just that we composers aren't used to having everything being so taken with such seriousness, and it being in the forefront, not being the sort of sideshow to the big symphonies and the big concertos and the soloists. It's like all about the composers, and it's just such an exciting couple of weeks that has meant so much to me and will continue to mean so much to me. And I just look forward to the time we can all be back and there in Santa Cruz and feel like we're all safe and we're all sharing the music together.